A year and a half ago, I made the decision to go celibate. I didn't have any expectations as to how long I wanted to be celibate for. I just knew that this was what intuitively felt right for the healing I needed. This was the very beginning of an incredible journey of cultivating love and safety within myself. My roots have grown deeper, my foundation feels stronger, and with each day, I feel as I'm uncovering more about myself. I know that I will only continue to foster this loving awareness as the years go on, but I felt called to reflect and share the different lessons I've learned in the most transformative year of my life so far. Hello. So, as to why I went celibate, there were a bunch of different factors that contributed to me making this decision, but I feel like what really led up to it was when I was doing more inner work and I was reflecting on my belief systems, my relationship to sex and my sexuality, and healing from sexual trauma. And I realized that I carried a really distorted perception of my worth, which not only affected my sexual experiences, but also just the way that I was carrying myself. And these beliefs weren't even my own. They stemmed from patriarchal and misogynistic conditioning, and they were very much reinforced by toxic dynamics that played out in my family. Also, just complete lack of conversation surrounding sex. Like, nothing surrounding sex at all was ever talked about in my home, so of course that meant no sex talk either, and that would lead me to finding out about it through porn. And porn is just not the most educational safe space to be learning about something so sacred and so important. And I found out about it at a young age, like I feel like most of us did growing up on the internet, and it was just so harmful to be absorbing all this really intense content that never talked about consent, boundaries, and safety, and also never really focused on women's pleasure either. It was very much heavily filtered through the male gaze, and I feel like I really adopted that into the way I perceived myself from a young age, just feeling like my body was an object and my worth was tied to how I looked, my appearance, and how desirable I was to men. And because of that, my self-esteem was essentially non-existent. Sex is just so beautifully and profoundly woven into this human experience, and I didn't want to live my life based upon these incredibly harmful belief systems that were just keeping me feeling small, unworthy, and not full in my power. I felt the best thing for me to do as I was healing and unlearning all of which that does not serve my highest truth was to not share my sexual energy with anyone during this time. Basically, I will just be sharing the different lessons that I've learned on my journey, and this is not me in any way trying to tell you what you need to do in order to heal on your journey, because that is very personal and individual. But whatever does resonate with you, I hope it can help. And yeah, just listen to your intuition. So setting boundaries has always been extremely difficult for me, and when I was digging deeper and reflecting as to why, it's because healthy boundaries were just never modeled to me as a child. Much of the time, mine were being crossed, or I witnessed them being crossed. I had no idea that boundaries were even a thing, and that my no is something that could be respected, or what I had to say is something that could be respected. When there was any sort of communication, especially surrounding like conflict, it would escalate really quickly and would lead to just really intense and unsafe situations sometimes. And yeah, so but I learned to associate that speaking up for myself and voicing myself would lead to scary experiences. So to essentially avoid that, I learned to just either comply or not say anything at all. And that was really harmful, especially as I was trying to navigate through life and adulthood. And because of these learned coping mechanisms that I learned to protect myself, it got me into my first relationship 3 years ago when I was a junior going into my senior year of high school. And it was extremely toxic and emotionally abusive, but it was a big fat mirror of just all the healing that I needed to look at. It was all my triggers, all my insecurities, just put into one. I remember there were many times when I didn't want to have sex or do anything sexual, and I would say no, but my ex was really persistent, and I'd eventually just give in and comply. And because I truly believed that it was my job to make him happy and that I had to prioritize his needs and wants before my own. And whenever I would do something that he didn't like or I didn't understand something, he would just tell me I'm annoying and stupid. And that was just a lot of how our communication went down. And I genuinely believed that I was responsible for creating like any sort of dissonance in our relationship. And he was just reflecting back to me the way I spoke to myself in my head and also his own inner critic of himself. And I am so grateful for that relationship and that it happened like relatively early on in my life, because that was my rock bottom and it truly only went up from there. And I just learned so much, so many vital life lessons, and just it made me reflect on my belief system and everything. But yeah, so going celibate really helped me be firm in my no. Making it clear to men who would ask for my number that I was only interested in friendship and nothing else, and just not giving out my number when I didn't feel comfortable to. And I know that sounds like basic common knowledge, but for someone who learned to just being a huge people pleaser essentially, that was really hard for me to do. This video is a little bit all over the place. Yeah, but what I wanted to say is that it also gave me opportunities to voice myself in other areas of my life. Like, there were many times when I had to speak my boundaries to different people in my life, and there were quite a good number of times when it was not well received and my boundaries weren't honored even after I spoke them. And that was just a sign that I don't need to keep these people in my life, because if they can't do the bare minimum, which is to respect me, then they can go. Speaking through that fear and letting that fear move through me as I made a decision to respect myself and stand up for myself was so powerful and so liberating. And it's something that I continuously have to practice, like, all the time. I was just finally choosing me and showing to the universe and showing to myself like what I will tolerate in my life, what it is that I deserve, and disrespect is most definitely not one of them. And there were also so many times when old people-pleasing mentality comes back. Even when I knew I had to speak up for myself, I had to say something. And I was so harsh on myself, but I just had to remember, like, healing is not linear. We're going to slip back into those old habits sometimes because those took so many years of conditioning to create those neural pathways. So to remake and rebuild new ones, that takes time and practice. So just be patient with yourself and give yourself the grace that sometimes you will fall back into these old tendencies, and that's okay. Just learn from it and anchor in some love. So this lesson, I feel like I frequently come back to, which is that I am everything that I've ever wanted, and I am the one that I've been waiting for. And when I made the decision to go celibate, I was finally redirecting all my energy back to myself and no longer expending it outwards. And it allowed me to really look at the distractions in my life, whether it were people or habits, and being like, okay, is this truly bringing me long-term fulfillment? Because I felt so empty for so long, and I felt like love and happiness were things that existed outside of me. Like, once I had that relationship, or once I had that, like, this amount of XYZ, or once I looked a certain way, then I would finally accept myself and be happy and feel loved. And that's just not true at all. So I had to be radically honest with myself. And so I was just investing in the things that did bring me long-term fulfillment. Things like drawing, painting, dancing, meditating, practicing yoga. And I was also spending so much time alone because I realized that I would rather be alone than hang out with people I couldn't be my most true, full self with. And I was going to concerts alone. I was going to different events or shows alone, taking myself on little picnic dates. And I was also hiking a lot, just spending a lot of time in nature in general, because I felt like Mother Nature was just the one place that I could exist in, where I felt so fully accepted and safe and loved just as I was, no matter what, just as I am, no matter what state of being I was in, like whether I was really depressed or like literally having an anxiety attack, or just really frustrated or angry, sad, or even just super excited and happy and full of joy. Like I was never too much or not enough whenever I was in nature. And I feel like that love and acceptance was able to teach me that I can give that to myself and I could extend it to other people as well. I realized that like I did not need anyone to validate my existence, and I could feel so full and whole and complete on my own. And that was a really exciting and new feeling for me. And just realizing that like I can fill up my own cup. Okay, yeah, another lesson that I learned was to not force or seek out connections. For quite some time, I feel like I was just forcing like friendships or different connections to happen, even though I knew it wasn't in full alignment, or it just wasn't full, like, clicking. And I had to learn the complicated way that if you're just trying so hard to make something happen, like just trying to force anything, this could apply to anything, like jobs or different events or opportunities, not just like relationships, like to happen, then it's most likely not meant for you. And that's okay, because there are so many other things that are meant for you. But if you're trying so hard to make this other thing happen, then how are you gonna like call in the thing that is really aligned and connected, you know? I feel like when I stopped doing that and was just existing as my raw, authentic self, I called in people, opportunities, and experiences that just required me to not change or alter myself in any way, or like overextend myself. I feel like, I don't know if this is exactly a lesson per se, but it's like, I guess, something that came with this whole journey, and that was exploring my sexuality and validating it as well, because going celibate allowed for just so much time for self-reflection. I was really questioning like how much of my attraction towards men was conditioned and how much of it was like real and genuine. And I mean, I definitely was very bi-curious in high school. For all of high school, I thought, like, I assumed, I was like, okay, well, like, I guess I must be bi. But I always couldn't fully identify with that label, because I would find myself like being confused, because I was like, I thought at the time that being bi meant being attracted to men and women 50-50, and it was also confusing because I would also find myself being attracted to people who wouldn't necessarily identify as man or woman. My last sexual partner, which was right before I went celibate, he's queer, and he introduced me to like a lot of his queer friends, and just like being around a queer community was really refreshing and super validating, because I feel like it showed me that like I don't need to identify so hard with any one label. Like, I'm allowed to just exist on the queer spectrum and not be so attached to a label, and meaning that I need to perform a certain way to fit what a stereotype of this mold looks like. And yeah, like, it doesn't have to be like this or that, you know? Just being overall more accepting of myself, because of just so much internalized homophobia from my parents, and like just within my family in general. And so I feel like I was finally taking like my queer identity more seriously, and like being like, yeah, like this is just like a part of my experience, like this is a part of what feels true for me, and it's okay. So this is more so what's true for my current reality, and just like what I really want to be focusing on, which is reclaiming my relationship to self-pleasure and just releasing shame around my body. Like, again, on a mind level, I know that there is nothing wrong or shameful about masturbation and my natural body, but it's like my body has a really hard time believing that. And whenever I'm just existing in my natural state, naked, I feel this, like, my whole posture changes, and I just feel super uncomfortable. Like, I don't know, like I need to cover up, or there's just like, there's something's just not right, like my existence is sinful. What's coming to mind is like several months ago, my dear sister and I, we were volunteering at this farm, and it was really hot outside, and I had like it was kind of like a bralette, but like a lounge bra, but like it looked like a bikini top. Not that that matters, but yeah, I was wearing that underneath my t-shirt, and it was really hot, and I wanted to take off my shirt, but I was so hesitant to, because I felt like it would be really, like, not scandalous, but like it felt almost like wrong for me to take off my shirt. And my friend just reminded me, like, it's okay, like you can take off your shirt, because you're just listening to your body, you're acting accordingly so that you can make your body more comfortable to exist in this hot weather. And it was so simple, but such a much needed reminder. It's like, yeah, there's literally nothing wrong. And same thing with like every time after I masturbate, I feel like the majority of the time I feel this ick that comes up always right after, and I don't like it. I don't like feeling that ick. And I feel like if I were to kind of pinpoint like where the height of this shame started to develop, like, I mean, I definitely would say it was kind of like a whole lifetime thing because of the conditioning, but where it really peaked and carried over to now, I feel like, was when about like 2.5 years ago, at a time when I really did not know my worth and was just so desperate for attention and male validation. I was video chatting with this guy and he wanted me to masturbate on camera. I told him that I would only do it if he paid me, and he said he would pay me after, but he only Venmo'd me $5 instead of the agreed amount, and in the description he called me a slut. Also wanted me to moan and make sounds. I was trying to be quiet because it was like in the middle of the night, but my brother had to use the bathroom, and so to get to the bathroom you have to pass my bedroom, and so my brother ended up hearing me, and he didn't confront me about it first. The next morning he immediately told my mom, and obviously that did not go down well. My mom just barged into my room and just was like violently screaming and just throwing things on my floor and took away all my electronics except my DS. I remember having my dear DS with me. After that situation, like the next 2 weeks, my brother did not sit with me at this dinner table. Whenever we ate dinner, he would literally sit at a different table, and I felt so disgusted with myself. Like, I internalized that shame and was like, I am such a gross, disgusting person that I can't even be looked at. And that obviously did not feel good. Also, when I was 15, I would send nudes to random men on the internet, and they knew that I was a minor, and I saw nothing wrong with it because I was just so glad to be getting male attention of any kind, because I wouldn't be getting it from boys at my school. And I knew that my age and my race were playing into the reason why I was getting this male attention, but it was like some sort of like, in a way, self-fetishization, because I felt like, well, if it's getting me attention, then like at least like that's all that matters, right? I just had to be really compassionate with myself, because you know what, no one taught me where my worth came from. No one taught me that, like, to value my body and to not just share it so freely, whether it be in person or just through like online, because still, regardless, that's still an exchange of sexual energy. And yeah, so I just had to be really forgiving towards myself, because of course it led me to like these scenarios. I still feel like uncomfortable a lot of the times, especially when I'm in public, when I'm wearing clothes that show more of my skin. And it makes me really sad, because I just want to exist in my body without feeling like there's something inherently wrong with me, and just like not feeling like this pressure of anyone sexualizing or objectifying me. And I know that's kind of inevitable when you just, when you're existing in this world, but I don't want it to hold me to have so much power over me to the point where I need to change myself to make myself feel more safe. Obviously, there are situations where I would do that, but like just in general. Yeah, so I really just want to reclaim my self-pleasure unapologetically, reclaim my body unapologetically, just even starting with like the basics, just being comfortable with my sensuality, like being comfortable with my own touch. And it's definitely great to like mentally understand and repeat affirmations that like there's no part of us that's shameful, but I really want to embody that with like actionable steps to practice, so that I can reaffirm and reestablish safety and love. And so if I could sum it up, going celibate really helped me to, like, propelled me to step into my authenticity and to be more accepting of myself. And while walking my path of authenticity may not be the easiest, it sure does allow for my heart to feel the most free. And that is the most important thing to me, because I really dislike conforming to a system or to people that don't hold what I believe to be true, or don't hold like the same values that I do. Not to say that mine is right or wrong, but it's just like, it's what feels true for me. I think that's all I have to share for this video, but thank you so much for taking the time to watch this and to listen, and for receiving any information, if you did at all. Also,